I sometimes hear the phrase that something is just a social construct. I never liked that phrase because of the just part. I always felt that social constructs are possibly the most important thing that we have, despite being completely made up, because that's what a social construct is. Let's take something dear to me, cinema. One of the basic things about films that we all understand is that they're just a series of still images shown very quickly. Now we all know that in an academic sense, but few people ever really stop to internalize that, because once you do, it's really weird. See, life is analog, but frames are distinct, digital if you will. Motion picture doesn't operate the way our brains do, but it affects us just as deeply as real life experiences do. Now here's the neat thing. Narrative films, as in those fictional stories, are almost always shot and displayed at roughly 24 frames per second. The reason for that strange number is an accident of history. See, celluloid film back in the day and today is very expensive. So when they cranked those films by hand back in the day, it made sense for them to crank it a little slower to save film. 24 frames per second was chosen because it was just high enough to feel smooth, but still save on celluloid. And 24 is kind of slow compared to what our brains can comprehend. Slow enough that we can detect the stutteriness, which again does not happen in real life. 60 frames and up is roughly where most people agree feels kind of closer to real life. So what's my point about frame rates and social constructs? Well, very importantly, after being exposed so much to 24 frames per second in the movies, we Americans started developing a cultural weight behind the unnatural stutter, where we feel the unreality of 24 as a part of storytelling world. We associate this stutter with a sense of peeking into a story as opposed to being part of it. Unlike the 60 frames per second I'm now shooting this clip in. Does it feel kind of weird? I usually film my vlogs in 24 frames per second because I wanted that detached feeling for this channel. It was an artistic choice. Sports, news, and other shows depicting reality are usually broadcast at 60 half frames per second. Like now. How does this feel? Does it feel kind of weird? Like the low production values? For most people it does. It's often called the soap opera effect because soap operas had a lower budget and shot on 60 frame video as opposed to 24 film. There's nothing today in the 21st century that prevents us from filming everything in a higher, smoother frame rate, like 72, 96, or 120 frames per second. And it sounds like a good idea, right? Smoother is better. Nothing stops us, except the social construct we made for ourselves that 24 frames a second is cinematic, while smoother frame rate is amateur. 24 frames is the language of fictional narrative, and when we don't see it, it feels off. We feel less invested in the story. It's a basic framework that helps us interpret the worlds that we immerse ourselves into and attach ourselves to. And being aware of how and why you feel what you feel doesn't make it any less real. That is how strong a social construct can become and how much we care about it, for better or worse. But what do you think? Do you feel that something being an artifact of humanity as opposed to being an objective phenomenon makes it less important? Just how much should we value a social construct when it becomes so central to our understanding of ourselves, but also creates a perceived harm of society? Would love to hear your thoughts because I have not decided for myself. I hope you get to know yourself a little better today. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video.